Welcome to Holistic Love, the podcast where we explore the multiple dimensions of love, relationship, personal growth. I'm your host, Fox Redsky, and I'm just very thrilled to talk about these things that need to be talked about. So, love is not a one-size-fits-all concept. I mean, it is a tapestry that is woven from conscious connection, self-care, and a deep understanding of yourself. And so in each episode, we're going to dive into the heart of these topics, just seek the wisdom and the insight from experts and people that I know and love that are actually living this. They're not talking it, they're living it and walking it. So, and today is no exception. So today's episode, we are going to dive right in the heart of conscious communication in relationships, the power of self-care, and the transformational use of astrology as a tool of self-awareness and relationship awareness. And today our guest is the remarkable, amazing, sexy, beautiful, wonderful Apollo Love. And he is going to talk about his experiences in the realm of love, communication, and share his wisdom and secrets of cultivating a very nurturing love that nurtures our well-being and harnesses the cosmic energies that shape our lives and the lives around us. So I want to say thank you so much. Just if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself, Apollo.
Sure, yeah. So first of all, I'm excited to be here. I love having conversations with people that are on fire for whatever it is that they do. And it's clear that you are. So I think that, that activates other people. Not to even, when people talk about influencers or how we influence people, it's not about like, you're going to be a certain way, so people are going to see it and want to be like you. It's that we're going to witness what it looks like for someone to be on fire for their truth and the things that they're passionate about. And then that sparks up the things in others. So with that said, I'm happy to be here with you. And yeah, I've been on quite a journey with love and my understanding of love. And it feels like these topics that you mentioned are several things that I really enjoy, sometimes collectively and other times individually, but seeing them all come together and how they influence one another. I'm just really excited about our talk. So
Awesome. Yes. And so, as you know, I have 27 years of astrology experience. It's kind of been my tool or the mechanism that I've really used to just allow myself the personal growth to really bring in and call in the things that I'm desiring, including, but not limited to, a very healthy relationship with an amazing partner who really allows me to be my most authentic self. And I've seen you do the same thing, and I really watch you just blossom. And I just love it. I love seeing you as a new dad. I love seeing you in all the stages of your life as they unfold. Just, it's so beautiful to watch. And I just, yeah.
thank you. And yes, I can attest to that. You have an amazing partner. I have met him. So seeing, your love blossom too has been beautiful to witness. So yeah.
And that's the thing right now, is that a lot of people are really struggling with like finding a partner and keeping a partner and really starting with like evaluating our self-love. And so it's kind of an epidemic, this loneliness. And I don't know, I think maybe the pandemic or whatever you want to call it kind of highlighted that. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think about, we talk about collateral damage from difficult situations and global situations, but there's also collateral beauty. And I love that concept because it's like, when I look at these last few years, I definitely went through the biggest shift of my life. It was like a really difficult time for me. I pretty much lost everything, community. I'm typically been pretty outspoken. So, but in that, I ended up almost like all the distractions, external distractions went away. And what I experienced at the time as loneliness was really quite the opposite in a way. It was me being more intimate with myself than I've ever been, and actually, like, you know, hanging out with myself more than I've ever been. And when I had that shift, everything else changed. And actually, the way that I met my partner was the very first event that I went out to, because I kind of spent the first couple years of the pandemic like internal. And it was the very first event, and I could feel that pull to like, oh, I'm supposed to go socialize, and like I'm out, and you know, and there was something inside of me that was like, but that's not where you're at. Like, what is your body telling you to do right now? It was like such an intellectual thought that I'm supposed to socialize because I'm out. And I ended up just going in the corner and closing my eyes and meditating. It wasn't like with a vision of like, I'm going to manifest my partner. Like, it wasn't that. It was just me like really connecting to myself with no agenda, no intention, just being with myself. And then when I opened my eyes, I walked into the next room, and she was the very first person I talked to. We ended up talking for 5 hours, had this amazing kiss at the end of the night, and now we have a baby together. How did that happen? It's amazing.
That is
But yeah,
that's
started here.
And you bring up something really beautiful, is that like a lot of times, you know, when we do that inner work, or when we stop like hyper focusing, and that's a problem with some people, is that they're like so intent on finding that person as to validate their worthiness. And they have to realize it's like the chicken before that. You have to validate your worthiness first. Then those things come naturally and organically, without forcing, or even without the true desire of like, that's the end game. But it ends up being the end game because you've done it. And so, Wash Day, thank you so much, brother, for just sharing that story. I know now that, you know, of course, that's the beginning of the relationship, right? You know, it's always fun and games at the very beginning, because, you know, we're all excited and we're in that honeymoon. But what are some things that you have either developed or created or incorporated to maintain and nurture that your relationship with your wife, or your partner, and your baby? Because that's also another added subtraction and, you know, pro and con.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when we had the conversation about like what type of example we want to be for our child, that was a big part of it, right? Like, we want her to grow up and not see examples of like this like super codependent family dynamic, and where you know, we become the voices in her head that are eternally living, and she, you know, it's like the parental blueprint that so many adults are carrying with them because of that core. So for us, it was important for us to prioritize our relationship with ourselves, and then prioritize our relationship with each other, and then as a parent, which I know maybe people have different opinions of that. Now, when we're talking about like physical safety, of course she comes first, right? Like, I'm not talking about like that. But it was important for us to not lose ourselves in the relationship, or to not lose our identity as parents, because she exists because we both were following our truth and our alignment, because we were focusing on self-love. So that's, in my view, like, that's how we want to raise her as well. So yeah.
Right. Well, and you know, that is so beautiful what you're speaking to, because oftentimes, you know, when we're trying to give from an empty cup, you know, we're not showing up in our full power and just radiance. What ends up happening is we build up resentment. And that's when we go back into those old patterns of like, you know, and that our parents did, right? You know, that was the example. Like they worked 40 hours a week, or they did the thing they did, and they came home, and instead of like just emanating love and like their highest version of themselves, that we usually got to have the shittiest version of them. And we should never do that to the ones we love, because, and it's an amazing example for her to see. Amazing. And because your children are never going to do what they're told, they're going to do what they're shown. And if you're showing that beautiful bundle of light, this is the way, and you're doing it, she's going to do it. She's going to do it. So Yeah. Hats
Definitely.
off. I am so proud of you. That is really, really great. Um, yeah. Yeah. And so
Thank you.
what are some of, could you give like a few examples of some things you might want to share with the audience that could be useful for them, an exercise or a tool that y'all have in your belt? How do you practice your self-care routine and then your relationship routine? Just not too deep, just a few things.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just finding things that make me happy, that put me in my body and out of my head. That's like a big thing for someone like me because I tend, actually, her as well. A little fun fact: we're both Scorpios. Have fun with that one. But it ends up, and you know what that means in both ways, different paths there. But it's we both tend to get really stuck in our heads. So when we find things that put us in our bodies,
Mm.
we can feel it. Like, she notices my whole dynamic change when I go and do my thing and then come home, or reconnect with her after. It's a whole different person energetically in a lot of ways. I'm a lot more open, I'm a lot more happy, and then I bring that into the relationship. So it's literally whatever brings you into that state. There's so many different paths to get there.
Awesome. And I have to agree with you, like I know that like in terms of my own self-care routine, if I haven't like taken care of my spiritual wellness, if I haven't gone by the river to meditate and pray, if I haven't, you know, read a book, or if I haven't been writing music, I know that like those are the things that get me excited, get me full. Then I'm just going to be like, I'm carrying that humdrum feeling over into the relationship surrounding me, with my daughter and my husband, so it's essential. It's very, very essential. And I think that especially women and maybe men too, I think this is probably for men too. We feel like we have to sacrifice, like we have to sacrifice our happiness in order to be the provider, in order to be the nurturer. And that story or that narrative, I don't think it's helped us in the long run. I mean, in the past, obviously it hasn't. And in fact, it's just made us more, more robotic and less, full and happy. So yeah, that is so beautiful. That is awesome. Thank you so much. Can you, can you tell me a very simple, effective self-practice that people who are listening to this can integrate into their lives?
Sure. Something that I picked up from the Hoffman process, which I highly recommend to everyone to experience, is this really powerful 7-day workshop. But there was this thing called a quadrinity check-in where you check in with the different aspects of yourself. So like each section of the meditation, it's like, a few minutes of like asking your body what it wants, and then asking your, thinking mind what it wants, asking your spirit what it wants, asking your emotional body what it wants, asking your inner child what it wants, right? So you go through these each one, and they just listen to each other, right? They don't judge each other. Like, of course the thinking mind is going to want to think. That's what it wants to do. Of course, this part of you is going to want that. So just having them like kind of sit at a round table inside your own mind and have them listen to each other and be like with compassion and love has been a really beautiful thing, because it even reminds me, so much of it is subconscious. And so anytime I do it, it's like, oh, I didn't even realize that I needed that. It's kind of like when you get a massage after a long time, and then you realize that you're supposed to feel this good and this loose, and you didn't even realize how tight you were getting gradually. And I think the same thing happens with our emotions and inner thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely love to do like wellness checks is what I call it. Where I look at these different areas of my life. Have I been doing my exercise? Have I been eating right? Have I been being creative and child? Exactly. Have I been the child version of me? Have I been the spiritual loving? And even our sexual wellness too is very, very important, whether we're in a relationship or not in a relationship. I feel like the physical and the emotional wellness are tied, right? Like if you're not feeling good, your emotions are going to be good, right? But our creative and our sexual wellness, I think, are also tied to each other. And so if you're not tapped into your sexual wellness, then your creative woman's probably going to be like this, and vice versa. So it's like, it's really important to have that love for ourselves, so we can come with a full cup to everybody, to show up for ourselves. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
One of the things that I've noticed, especially, being a matchmaker and an astrologer, is that there is this huge notion, especially in the singles community, that it's the other person should be fixed before I fix myself. And it's a strange thing. I know that you and I have a lot of conscious, beautiful people, but it's like, at least some of the people that I've talked to, it's so bizarre for them to even hear that, like, well, they need to fix themselves. It's like, no, you got to come in to fix. So what are your thoughts on that people thinking that?
Yeah, you know, I think that so many people are at different places in their lives and in their growth and in their journey. And when they overlap, how they overlap, and how long they overlap, is there is such a wide variety of it. And I don't know if anyone is ever at a place where they're like, I'm completely fixed, or someone else is completely fixed. What I can say is that with our relationship, when you talked about like how at the beginning there is like that NRE, that new relationship energy, that like, that love that happens. Interestingly enough, the older I've got, the less I enjoy that part a lot still, but I also can't wait to get past it, because that's when so much of the reality of our dynamic and who the person is gets revealed. That's when I find out like how they show up. Because I think sometimes we also idolize people, or we have expectations of them, and with neither of those things that we do with ourselves at the same level. So for me, it's about like where that inner crossing is in our healing journey. And for me and my partner, it was really like it was perfect. It was like she entered that state at the same time that I entered that state. When we found each other, I swear we both were mad. We weren't happy. We were like, I'm single, I'm happy, I'm living my best life. Like, why, and here we are, like, we were falling in love. We're like, no. But then we realized that we can still, because we're coming together from that space, we could still have that. We don't have to let go of that. And it would be a disservice to ourselves and to the relationship if we did. So we still focus on ourselves, but also, accept each other's, I don't want to say the word flaws, but you know what I mean? Like when someone is at that low point and we know who they are outside of that low point, like, can you love them in that, and realize that that's not who they are, that it's like, oh, you're showing me your hurt child, and that means you feel safe enough, and there's enough love here for you to show that unevolved, egotistic, hurt, angry child self. What an honor that is, that you're showing that to me and I get to hold that. And then when that's given to me, it's just a beautiful safe space. But you can't be in that unless you're able to do it within yourself. So
Absolutely. And I think that, especially in the society that we live, where it's like a very much swipe society, I think we get addicted initially to that new, like, and then it's like, oh, it's gone. Well, next, but they never get to see, if you never get to see that true intimacy into me, you see where you can be the vulnerable parts of yourself, where you can be, like you said, the lost little angry child. You don't realize that is actually the real juicy stuff, man. And so it's really important, I think, for our audience, including the singles and the couples, to hear that and know that, like, that is such a blessing. That is such a blessing when you can count on someone and to see you at your worst. When I don't have all the makeup and I don't look, maybe I gained 20 pounds, or whatever, that I can be that version of myself and still receive unconditional love, and that's, yeah, you're absolutely, it is totally a gift. I want to share something with you something that me and my husband do, some of our self-care
yes.
Practices to keep it up, to keep all that magic up. So one of the things that we did, and we started doing this from day one, it was really beautiful, was that we would have like monthly anniversaries, and we celebrated the day we met, and so we met October 27th. So every 27th of the month, whether it's just a little card or like some little sexy romantic message on the phone, we're constantly renewing that like playful, teasing aspect of our love that we like to share with each other. And it's been like a very beautiful thread that has just carried us through our entire relationship, including the times when we're not the best version of ourselves. And so I just kind of
Oh, I
wanted
love
to do
that.
that. Thank you.
Might have to steal that.
Yeah, and there's so many tools out there. There's so many beautiful things that we can do when we find that beautiful person. And I know that sometimes people self-sabotage too, and that's that work we haven't done yet, right? If we find the partner who's like fits with us and is good, and we're like, oh my God, this person's too good for us, like we will subconsciously try and fuck it up. It's just like, unless you've done the work. Can you give me any examples in the past where you might have done this?
Ooh, where I self-sabotaged? I guess, yeah, maybe it was either giving into my anger or pedestaling the other person, or specifically entering relationships where people will pedestal me. I actually think that that's the biggest thing that I had this realization that I used to be very public, and when I look at it, I go, okay, like I was a performer, a music artist, author. I was always on stage, and I sometimes question, like, the core drive behind some of the things I did in my 20s was for recognition, external validation, power, perceived power. And then when I was in that state, when I reached some of those success points, whether it was doing the reality TV stuff or the music stuff, whatever it was, I would typically attract people that would look at me in that light, which is really like this filtered best version of me. But the self-sabotage was using it to hide who I really, like, the part of me that actually really needed to be loved. Right. So then when I get into relationships with people that would initially perceive me that way, and then we got to the real stuff, they'd be like, oh, who's this? It's like, that's who I always was. I was put, and maybe I did it on a more like public scale, but I think on some level we all do that when we first meet people. We put on this perception. We want them to see the best version of ourselves because we want to be liked by this person that we're into and that we're attracted to. But it could also be a way to attract people that like you for that side of you, but not all of you. And then that's why so many relationships collapse within that first year, because as we're taking off the layers of our image self and our outer exterior, our armor, it gets more vulnerable for us, right? As it gets closer to our heart, it gets scarier. And then when that person leaves or our behavior sabotages them, we go, see, I was right to have that armor up. And then we rebuild the armor even stronger, which is like, it's supposed to, the total opposite is what's actually needed. Is when I meet people, it's just like, here's my authentic raw self. It either pushes people away or it pulls people towards me, but at least it's real, so.
Oh, that is so beautiful, brother. That is just words of wisdom. Like, I'm definitely going to put that somewhere in the book. Definitely. So I did want to talk a little bit about astrology. And I don't know your depth of knowledge. I do have your star chart in front of me, though, so I can look at that real quick. But I kind of like, so for me, astrology has been a really good tool. And there's so many tools you can use out there, right? For self-awareness and developing who you are. But as I looked at what my parents were doing, and then I looked at the wound that I carried as a child, I really began to dive into that like unconscious part of myself. And when I started to make the unconscious conscious, Apollo, that's really when I started to manifest everything. And I'm not just talking about the relationship that in my life, I'm talking about the life that I'm living here in Costa Rica, every aspect, because there was some part of me, and everybody's wound is different, and no wound is bigger or small. You can't compare pain. But there was some part of me that just didn't feel worthy. There was an unworthiness. And so, yeah, man, astrology has been such a beautiful tool, when I'm looking at, so what's really interesting, I don't know if you know this. So in astrology, the face that you show to the world, right, is your rising sign. In the house opposite of that is your descending sign. And that is the parts of you don't want to look at. You're like, nope, I'm not going to look at that. That's not me. And guess what? Those are all of your relationships. That's the house of relationships. So we get to have these partners who come and show us the parts of ourselves that we haven't integrated, that shadow that we haven't integrated into ourselves. So for me to see that and look at that and really be like, oh, that thing I hate about that other person, oops, I got it too, bitch. I got it too. Maybe not at that degree, but it's like, yeah. So I know I'm going on a tangent, but like, would you say that astrology has been that for you as in terms of a tool, or,
Yeah. I'm probably like in the middle of the pack of like, if someone is really like an astrology expert and someone isn't into it at all, I'm like somewhere in that middle range where like I don't necessarily like the thought of using it preemptively is interesting. I know that's something that you're looking to do, so I'm very curious to see it play out. I think it's a really very interesting idea. I've looked at it in hindsight. I've looked at it like, oh, my last couple of relationships were both Geminis and they both ended this exact same way and they hurt in a very similar way. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay away from that sign, which like in reality, like, look, I'm not going to be a zodiacist, right? Like any ist isn't the best thing, right? Like racist, sexist, there's also zodiacists. Like I'll never date a Scorpio. And I'm like, well, do you know their rising sign? Do you know their moon sign? Do you know like their actual inner work and all the stuff that they've done beyond that? Because like, me and her being a Scorpio is like, I've dated a Scorpio before. It was probably my most toxic relationship. So in my mind, I'm like, oh no, not another Scorpio, but this ended up being my healthiest relationship. So it's like, there's so many other factors at play, which is where like someone can come to, an expert that could kind of help connect the pieces.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. And, I try to, I don't try to turn everyone into an astrologer, right? But I really love giving people those aha moments. We're like, yeah, that's true, and it's all psychology, astrology is like, it's ridiculously old. We don't know how old it is. Some say it's like 3,000, 5,000, and it's evolved just as we've evolved. We're not the same person, civilization isn't like what it was 3,000 years ago. And so it's beautiful. It's an unfolding, and it's been very, very useful to me in my life. And I specifically use it in my matchmaking, and it just is 99% usually accurate. Like, oh my God, yeah, these people will not get along, or oh my God, this is the perfect match. But I also realize in my matchmaking, I've used it for hindsight too, because like I'll get a feeling. When you talk to someone and you really get to know them as the Scorpions that we are, we're the little detectives. We just get this intuitive feeling about it. And we're like, oh, wait, that is a match. I'll even have a dream about it sometimes the night before. And then I'll look at the astrology and I'm like, oh, shit, because I'm talking to hundreds of people, from all over the world that are like super successful. So it is definitely a filtered process, but absolutely, you want to use it in a way you're not a snob about it. You don't want to be sitting there, oh, I don't ever want to date this person. Let's look at the reasons why, because somewhere in your chart, you probably haven't integrated that. So it's got its good and its pros. And I definitely think you should always listen to your inner guidance. Like that is, above anything. Don't listen to what I say. Don't listen to what Apollo says. Listen to your own gut right here. This is the biggest brain you have, is your own intuition in your heart. So
absolutely. Well said.
Do you mind if I take a look at your chart for a little bit? Let's take a look a little bit at your chart. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely. Go
You don't
for it.
mind? Do you mind me sharing some things here? Hold on, I'm gonna pull it up real quick.
So also, just so you know, she's a rising Scorpio and a Pisces moon.
Ooh.
So it's quite a dance.
All right. So, wow. So you are a Scorpio sun, and you are a Pisces moon, and what is your rising sign here? Hold on.
Leo.
Leo. Well, and so in your life, you are meant to shine your light because you give permission to other people to do the same. So your purpose in this life is to shine that light. If people love it, speak your truth, speak your voice, and that's your power. That is your gift to the world, and you're able to really do this with your sun in Scorpio. So you're not gonna talk about the shallow things. You're gonna get to the root of the matter. And maybe in the past you've said things that might have upsetted people, but it was because it was true. It was just the truth of the thing. So bringing the light to the darkness, and that is a beautiful, beautiful power that you have in this life. And finding the right partner, which you have, to be able to do that, especially with the Pisces moon, because the Pisces moon, ooh, they are the keepers of the knowledge. It is the oldest sign in the zodiac, according to, it was the first sign, and so it's like, it's got all that grandma knowledge, it's got that knowledge of the unconscious. So you're taking the darkness, the things, the taboo things that we don't want to talk about, and you're taking that deep, spiritual, ancient wisdom and bringing it to the surface. So wow. I'm so grateful for you for doing that in this lifetime. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. Yeah. I it's interesting hearing you say that. I always felt like my Scorpio and Leo like had this like aggressiveness to it. And but the Pisces moon it was like almost like a triangular counterbalance, and that they work together. So it's interesting hearing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. The Pisces energy isn't afraid to feel it, is not afraid to feel it and let it go and cry. And especially, there's a lot of shame, I think, because of the remnants of the patriarch and some of the toxic masculinity is y'all aren't allowed to be vulnerable. Y'all aren't allowed to be like, you always got to be the strong one. It's important to be able to show your vulnerability because you give permission to all the other men to do the same thing. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And my daughter has a Pisces moon. She's an amazing musician. And I'm just like, the girl, man, she like tells me some stuff sometimes. I'm like, ooh, that's truth. That's truth.
Yeah.
Well, I know. Go ahead.
No, it's so interesting hearing all this.
Yeah, I know that you and I can talk forever, and you're one of my favorite people to hear, and I just love everything that you have to say because it really comes from a place of experience and authenticness. And so I'm just totally grateful for you. And but I did want to, so like for the last few minutes of this conversation, was there anything that you wanted to talk about, mention, or share with the audience?
Let's see. I have a children's book coming out called Thank You for Sunshine, Thank You for Rain. Yeah, and it'll be out on Amazon in probably a month or two. So it'll be under the Poetry family.
Aww.
That's it. That's my only plug.
Well, that's so beautiful, and I commend you for the beautiful family that you have, and the way that you are really stepping into your fatherhood, and as a provider, and as a nurturer, because men can be nurturers as well. It's important, and I'm just real grateful, just grateful to have you on with us today. And yeah. So To my audience, I want to say this is, if you are on the quest for deeper connection with your partner and you're seeking to enhance your self-care routine, or you're curious about the magic of astrology, you know, I am coming out with a book called Holistic Love. And this talks about navigating relationships. And Apollo here will be included in this as well. And also just your own discovery of growth and love. Because I'm going to share something with y'all. When you heal and rise into your highest form, you do it for us all. You do it for the whole world. And that's the thing. It's not a selfish act, because we're all connected. We're all one. And when we see that and we start to love ourselves and be the best, beautiful versions of ourselves, love, abundance is effortless. The universe gives it to us, hands it to us. So I just want to say thank you all for listening. Thank you all for wherever you are in your journey. And thank you, Apollo, so much for just sharing your voice and your beautiful perspective. And, you know, you have my absolute respect.
Thank you. The respect is mutual. Support this person, everyone. Support Fox. You're doing great work.
Well, that's it. That's a wrap, everyone. You'll have a beautiful day, and I will see y'all later.